Today on The Young and the Restless, Daniel shares his fears with Lily, Nate shares big news with Audra, and Diane learns Kyle took a new job. At the Abbott mansion, Diane opens the door to Summer. She guesses her visit has to do with her mother's arrest. Summer wanted to tell Kyle herself. Diane explains they found out together. Summer asks, how did he react? Diane says he was shocked. Tucker was at the club when it happened and wasted no time in spreading the news. Diane says Summer can stop covering for her mother now. Summer insists that her mother has realized what the war between them has done and wants it to be over. She wants to speak to Kyle. Diane says he went out. Summer notes it's late and asks where. Diane doesn't know, but he's been really agitated lately. She thinks maybe things will be different now that Phyllis has been arrested. Diane remarks that it's her turn with the GCPD now. She is going to get on with her life. She hopes Summer and Kyle will do the same whether together or apart. Summer stuns Diane by explaining that her mother wasn't captured, she turned herself in. Diane complains that they're all her victims. Summer thinks Kyle needs to hear the whole story. Diane has no idea where Kyle went, unless, maybe he went looking for you. Audra opens her suite door to Kyle and pulls him inside where they make out passionately up against the door. She lifts off his shirt and pushes him toward the bed. She purrs, I was surprised to get your text. She thought he'd want to be well rested for his first day at Newman tomorrow. I'm so happy you took the job. They agree they'll make a new team. Kyle says this is a celebration of his new job, and their new collaboration. Audra pulls his belt off and he slides her robe off her shoulders as he kisses her neck. He lifts her up off the floor and drops her on the bed to make love to her. After sex, Kyle tells Audra, that was amazing. She agrees. Kyle asks, so what now? Audra is waiting to hear from Nate. There's something going on with the Newmans, and she's curious to hear what she found out. Kyle remarks that fun time is over. She's already back to work. It's who she is, she reminds him. Kyle's not complaining. Audra says good, because work time and playtime are two very separate things for me. But I do give 1000% to each of them. They start kissing again. She asks, better? Kyle says, much. He offers to ask around to find out what's going on with the Newmans. Audra thinks Nate has this under control. Audra wonders how his wife would feel about him sharing Newman intel with an outsider. Kyle admits she'd hate it and accuse him of taking advantage of his family connections, but she's done worse, so. Audra asks how she feels about him working with her. Kyle says she doesn't trust Audra and warned him to watch his back. Should I? Audra purrs, as long as you don't cross me, we'll be fine. At the penthouse, Lily opens her door to Daniel, who is upset. He tells Lily that his mother has officially been booked and is spending the night in a jail cell. Phyllis finally did the right thing. He says something doesn't feel right, something feels off. His mother turned herself in and this witness turns up to corroborate her story. He wants to think it's a coincidence, but Lily says it's Phyllis. You always have to wonder. They discuss the EMT coming back out of the blue to back up Phyllis' story. Daniel doesn't know who or what to believe anymore. They agree it could be a happy coincidence. Daniel says when his mother learned Carson had been found, her surprise seemed like acting. I know her. I know her well enough to recognize her tells, and I definitely saw them tonight. Lily asks if he thinks she turned herself in because she knew this guy would come forward. Daniel figures she's not telling him the whole story. Lily questions if loving her makes him a loving son or a fool. In the GCAC dining room, Christine is surprised Heather took over for Michael. She asks how Lucy is doing. Heather imagines she'll want to come and see her in Geno City once school ends, unless she wants to stay with. Christine finishes, Paul, how is he? Heather thinks maybe he's just at the point in life where he's searching for something. Talk turns to Phyllis. Chris doubts she was acting sincere when she turned herself in. Heather muses that maybe she truly wants to take responsibility for her actions. They debate about the eyewitness. Christine tells Heather to save it for the trial, but the attorney argues that the charges should be dropped, and Phyllis released immediately. They bicker over whether Phyllis was Stark's victim or his partner in crime. Heather says the ambulance driver witnessed Stark attack Phyllis. Chris scoffs that it's all too convenient. She's convinced Phyllis turned herself in to save her own ass. They argue until Chris holds up a hand and says, Heather, stop. dressed to thrill, some of our favorite Daytime Emmy 2022 looks. Heather and Christine argue over whether or not Phyllis is innocent. Christine wonders how long Michael has known where Phyllis was and feels the whole thing is all too convenient. Heather tells Chris that Phyllis reached out to Baldwin to turn herself in. She wanted to set the record straight. Chris isn't buying it. Without Carson, she knew she'd be facing a murder charge. Heather guesses Christine thinks she knew Carson was about to come forward. Chris replies, the question is, how did she find out? At the Abbott mansion, Summer has no texts or missed calls and tells Diane that Kyle is definitely not looking for her. Diane hopes they can work it out. Kyle will remember where his heart lies eventually. Summer asks why she cares. Diane looks at her and sees the woman that her son loves, simple as that. Summer wants him back, but she doesn't know how. So much has happened. Diane tells her there's always a way back and laughs. Trust me. I know. Summer asks what she would do. Diane says the old Diane would beg and manipulate. Summer muses, the old Summer would do the exact same thing. In Audra's suite, Kyle thinks he should go. They agree they're not at the spending the night stage yet. Kyle also has a little boy who wakes up early. Audra thinks he's probably a cutie, and is glad that Kyle's not clingy. Can you please try to be a little more discreet with your text messages? She explains Tucker saw the last one. Kyle doesn't want him anywhere near his business. Audra is sure he'll try to get under Kyle's skin, but don't let him. She urges him to relax. It's all good. They kiss goodbye and Audra tells him she'll see him tomorrow for his first day at Newman Media. She opens the door to show Kyle out and Nate's standing there. At Lily's place, Daniel is exhausted. They decide to talk about something other than Phyllis. Lily says she got a new headboard, and they debate whether beige is blah. He asks about her chat with Nate. Lily says whenever Victoria's name came up it went off the rails. Daniel reminds her that people judged them in the old days too. Lily says this is now, and this is her cousin. She's upset with him and worried about him. The Newman will use you up and spit you out. I've seen too many people get hurt by that family. At Audra's door, Nate tells Kyle he'll see him tomorrow at Newman Towers. Kyle is looking forward to it. Once alone, Audra tells Nate, "Don't say one word." Nate has no intention of doing so, and says it's none of his business unless it affects their business. Audra assures it won't. She guesses he has big news. Nate tells her he was summoned to the family ranch tonight and Victor was in rare form, reading the family the riot act and even suggesting he couldn't be trusted. Audra doesn't think that sounds good. Nate wants to tell her the rest over dinner. She'll love the ending. At the Abbott mansion, Summer tells Diane she won't try to trick Kyle into coming back. She already tricked him into marrying her once. Diane's mystified, so Summer explains how she donated her liver to Lola in exchange for him marrying her. Diane says she's different now. Summer thinks she'd better go. Diane invites her to stay and wait for Kyle. Just then, he walks in. He says to his mom, "What's she doing here?" Nate and Audra perch at the GCAC bar. He tells her Victor is back and has taken control of the company. He wants Nick to work with Adam and Sharon. Audra asks how she fits into this. Nate explains Sharon inherited a business and proposed a merger with McCall. Victor signed off on it. Audra marvels that Sharon, who runs a coffee house, is suddenly running Tucker's business. Nate warns Audra not to underestimate her. Audra asks where this leaves Newman Media and Newman Enterprises. Nate says he wants her to stay on as COO, which means Newman Media is all hers, working alongside her new hire, Kyle Abbott. At the Abbott mansion, at Lily's place, Daniel thanks her for being there for him, for listening to him, for distracting him with paint colors and fabric swatches. She grins, "You're welcome," and kisses him. Daniel should go. His mother's arraignment is first thing. Just then, he gets a message and grimaces. It's an update on the arraignment. As much as he wants to believe the worst is over, every time one storm ends, another blows in that's bigger and worse than the one before. At the Abbott mansion, Diane eyeballs Kyle and asks if there's something he wants to talk about. He says no. He needs to get some sleep and is starting a new job at Newman Media in the morning. Diane's not pleased. Kyle reminds her his father unceremoniously kicked him to the curb. His loss. Diane hates this. He's at odds with his wife and his father, all because of a situation that never should have happened. Diane thinks he's being impulsive. Kyle insists he knows what he's doing. Diane doesn't want to argue, so heads to bed. At the GCAC bar, Audra and Nate toast to a bright future. She's grateful Victor decided to keep them in place. Nate confides that after some time passes, Victoria intends to fold McCall into Newman without Adam. They toast again as Summer walks in. Summer walks up close enough to smell Audra's perfume and falters. Audra says, "Hello, Summer." "Summer," crestfallen, says Audra.